Protect your DNA. BioPQQ can promote formation of new mitochondria. Infowarsstore.com.
Launches a military attack against North Korea. And you can learn more right now at Infowars.com.
Leading a frontal assault.
Welcome to the Infowars Nightly News. I'm David Knight. It's Wednesday, April the 5th, 2017. Here are top stories.
Tonight, Newsweek is calling for the federal arrest of Alex Jones because of what they say was an explicitly anti-gay threat to beat up Congressman Adam Schiff.
Fill your hand, you son of a bitch!
Meanwhile, the numerous real threats to President Donald Trump go unpunished as mainstream media talking heads and the Hollywood elite get away with assassination threats to the President of the United States. Then, guess who's behind the big push to have Google censor the alternative media? You guessed it, George Soros, public enemy number one. That's coming up next on the Infowars Nightly News.
The reason Infowars Life has 5-star ratings on major third-party sites is because I want products I'm going to use for my family. I take this, my family takes this, and then it funds the operation with the most hardcore, truthful information you're going to find anywhere. So what you find in our news is the same thing you find in our products at InfowarsLife.com.
If I ever forget to take them, I have a noticeable difference. I don't feel good. The nascent iodine is one of the ones that was life-changing for me.
Yeah, I actually have just run out of my super female. I had a few bottles at my house, and I've been taking it again, hitting the gym once again. Very exciting, feeling great, looking good. So, and I know my hair is luxurious once again. So obviously the super female is amazing. I love it.
Nascent iodine is essential. Survival Shield X2. If there's one product that I would say is life-changing that I would suggest, it's Nascent iodine Survival Shield X2. It's got a 5-star rating.
It's a win-win. InfowarsLife.com.
Today, Steve Bannon is out and Rick Perry is in at the National Security Council. Now, in and of itself, this would not be that much of a big deal because, of course, Steve Bannon said that he came in to change things the way they were being run under the Obama and Clinton administration, the State Department, the way they were operating things there. But this is part, I believe, of a move within the administration. Now, Donald Trump has tweeted out, says there is no civil war. We're going to take a look at this and see if you think there's a civil war. I think that there is a civil war that is going on between the forces that represent nationalism and the fight against globalism and those who would like to see the status quo, the neocons, the globalists. And I think it's very significant that this is happening on a day that we now have people calling for Syrian involvement by the U.S., using the same MO that we saw 4 years ago. Absolutely amazing that they keep recycling these same types of attacks. So we're going to talk about the fallout with that, but let's take a look first at what's going on here. Of course, they say that they're adding Rick Perry because of his credentials at the Department of Energy. They say that the lion's share of the Department of Energy's budget goes towards the National Nuclear Security Administration. That right there would be scary enough. we got Rick Perry in charge of that. But then the Austin Statesman also adds that Perry will become the first former Dancing with the Stars contestant to have a high-level seat at the table to decide national security matters for the United States. I think it is more interesting what they failed to mention was that he will be the first one who was dancing with the Bilderberg globalists who will be at the national security. But, of course, that's not true. There have been many others who are dancing with the Bilderbergers. They just don't mention the fact that he was attending there. Now, as we look at this report, before Perry news, as I said, this was just another isolated incident. But let's take a look at how this has been developing. Now, back when Bannon became a member of the National Security Board as counsel, as Kit Daniels pointed out, he said that he had gone there, that Susan Rice had operationalized the council, and he was going to the NSC to undo that. He said, I was put on to ensure that it was de-operationalized. General McMaster's has returned the NSC to its proper function. But there's some other things that are going on here. And, of course, yesterday we had Roger Stone talking about the back and forth with Jared Kushner and Joe Scarborough at MSNBC, and the types of alliances that are going to be happening there. And I've got a lot of files where we've been talking about this going back for about 2 months. This has been going on all the way back to the beginning of February. CNN says, well, what does his demotion tell us about the Trump White House? I mean, is this just somebody normally moving out of this, or are there power plays that are going on? They say this suggests a potentially significant change in the power balance with the 4 top White House advisors. And, of course, they say those advisors are Ivanka and Jared Kushner and Reince Priebus and Kellyanne Conway and Bannon. I wouldn't necessarily put Kellyanne Conway in that mix. I think the other person that goes in there is Gary Cohen, former chief executive at Goldman Sachs. He seems to be allying with Kushner and reviewing the people that came in that got Donald Trump elected. As they point out, they say that he would sit on this committee typically reserved only for the upper echelon of the military. They thought that that was a very unusual move at the time. A lot of people were concerned about that. Ivanka said that that he was an ideologue, that Trump has to take a look at what is happening with Bannon. And, of course, Politico says that as we look back in recent weeks, Kushner's son-in-law of Donald Trump and senior advisor has been asking searching questions of inside and outside advisors of the White House performance and complained about Bannon in particular. So when we had Roger Stone talking yesterday about Joe Scarborough being contacted multiple times with texts by Jared Kushner, and that is perhaps what was being talked about. I think one of the things that is most telling is that there was a text between them, and the next day that we had Joe Scarborough talking about what was happening with the White House. As we say, they were talking about Bannon flying close to the sun. This is back 2 months ago, and this is something that has been happening from the very beginning. Those who are part of the establishment, those who are, as Bannon pointed out, the enemy, the mainstream media, as well as the Republican and Democrat establishment, those on Wall Street, were moving to try to get Bannon removed. And one of the things they were doing was ridiculing him and ridiculing Trump, saying Trump was not in control. And so we had a situation I thought was very interesting, very telling. Going back 2 months ago, February the 7th, The Hill says Bannon is flying too close to the sun. And we had Donald Trump obviously was offended by all the talk that he was not in control. He tweeted out, he said, I call my own shots, largely based on accumulation of data, and everyone knows it. Now, this was just 1 hour after Joe Scarborough had played a clip from Saturday Night Live where they were mocking him and using Saturday Night Live to mock Bannon, to mock Donald Trump. So that makes this communication that Roger Stone was talking about, the communication that Politico is saying, that Kushner is talking to those inside and out, particularly complaining about Bannon, and then we find that he's talking to Joe Scarborough. So this is the politics that's there. But what does it mean for you and I? Because you may not really care about who's in charge as long as Trump's agenda gets enacted. Well, that's what I'm concerned about as well. And I don't really care about the internal politics, who he uses to get it done. But as they point out in Politico, They say, they quote one senior administration official saying, the big fight is between the nationalists and the West Wing Democrats. Why would they say the West Wing Democrats? Well, because Jared Kushner has been a Democrat all of his life. Gary Cohen has been a Democrat. They have been allied together in this. And it was Jared Kushner who brought Zeke Emanuel in multiple times to meet with senior staff on Obamacare. Remember, Zeke Emanuel, Rahm Emanuel's brother, was the one who had said beginning of January that we're not going to see Obamacare repealed. You can't get rid of it. And so he came in to try to sell the idea that Obamacare should not be repealed, but it should be, dressed up. We should put some lipstick on it and keep this thing going. And so when we look at that, and we look at the fact that we have Jared Kushner now put in charge of fixing the administrative state, or draining the swamp, if you will, but it was Steve Bannon who was talking about dismantling and deconstructing the administrative state. Do you really think that is going to happen? I'm very concerned that that is not going to happen. And if we go back and we look at this campaign against Bannon, it wasn't just Saturday Night Live. It wasn't just Joe Scarborough. We had Salon just 2 weeks ago saying Steve Bannon's dangerous domination of national security. And at the time they said, not only has Bannon established a shadow NSC known as the Strategic Initiatives Group in the White House, which, by the way, we just learned that didn't exist, but he has also blocked National Security Advisor H.R. McMaster from naming his own staff. So they were trying to make him look like he was dominating Trump, like he was dominating McMaster and so forth. Is this blowback against this narrative that's been fed to us by the media? Well, we'll have to wait and see what happens on other issues, like Obamacare, like dismantling the administrative state. Also, then we saw that the end of February, we saw an article from the Wall Street Journal that Trump would be willing to remove Bannon from the National Security Council. So we had the mainstream media at that time asking Sean Spicer at press conferences, would you be willing to let General McMaster remove Steve Bannon from the National Security Council? Can't we get him out of there? And of course, at the time, Sean Spicer said, well, it's McMaster who has control of the Security Council. If he wants to remove him, he can do that. But the important thing here is that the mainstream media, including the comedy shows and everything, were constantly pushing to remove Steve Bannon. And then there's this issue. When we look at trade, when we look at the economy, there is a civil war brewing there as well. If we go back a month ago, March 10th, there was an article on the Financial Times as well as Zero Hedge talking about that article, saying a civil war is breaking out in the White House over trade. Zero Hedge added, and Goldman is winning. I said earlier this week when we discussed Peter Navarro's jarring op-ed in the Wall Street Journal, in which he alleged the persistent U.S. trade deficit would put national security in jeopardy, we said a better question than that is, why is he writing this? Why is he going to a public forum like the Wall Street Journal? Is there friction between him and the Trump camp? The Financial Times reported a civil war has broken out within the White House over trade, leading to what one official calls a fiery meeting in the Oval Office, pitting economic nationalists who are close to Donald Trump against pro-trade moderates from Wall Street. They say facing off in the hardline group of Navarro and other nationalists, Steve Bannon is a faction led by former Goldman Sachs Gary Cohen, a career globalist who leads Mr. Trump's National Economic Council. That would be the West Wing Democrat wing. That's what we have to be concerned about, folks. This is a civil war within the Trump administration as to whether or not we're going to dismantle the structure of the globalist state that is there, of the administrative state, whether we were going to pursue the agenda that Donald Trump had, or are they going to remove the people who got Trump elected, remove the people who put together the agenda that he ran on, the agenda that you and I voted for? Is that what's going to happen? They say at the time, the globalists led by Cohen and others have seized on Navarro's public comments and widespread criticism by economists on his stand of trade deficits and other matters to try and sideline him. What was it that he said that was so controversial? Well, he said that the trade deficit is a national security issue. Of course it is. If we don't have an economy, we can't defend ourselves. And so as they point out, Cohen has also been featuring more prominently in discussions over the renegotiation of the North American Free Trade Agreement, NAFTA. They say, meanwhile, Cohen has been beefing up his staffing ranks with more like-minded globalist supporters like Andrew Quinn, a former trade official who served as senior negotiator during the Obama administration's push for the TPP. And so we had Breitbart at the time say that he is an enemy within the Trump administration. Folks, we have to understand that we knew this would happen, and we have to watch this very carefully. We want to make sure that Donald Trump stays on the right course. The thing that concerns me more than anything is that his son-in-law, who is very close to him and, of course, family, that he would be allying with the people who have pushed these things, that he would be bringing in the architect of Obamacare, that he would be bringing in one of the architects of TPP. Now, of course, Donald Trump has shut down TPP, but we still have to be concerned about that. And then this final issue here, Bannon breaks with Pence and delivers a warning to Europe. And this is February the 21st. It was Bannon who said that we needed to have a bilateral basis in which we deal with European Union, that it is a flawed construct, and he favored relations on a bilateral basis. And so at the time, it was reported, they said there are two clear axes developing with the Trump administration, a Pence, Mattis, Haley foreign policy, and of course you're going to hear about our UN Ambassador Haley talking about what happened in Syria today, and then there's a Trump, Bannon, Miller foreign policy. So let's talk about what's going on in the Middle East. Today we had dozens killed in waves of attacks of Iraq's Tikrit. Oh, wait a minute. I thought it was Syria. Did we miss that? No, actually, you didn't hear anything about that, did you? You didn't hear anything about the attack of people dying in Iraq's Tikrit. And, of course, that was a tragedy, too. There's a huge tragedy in Syria, but what they're playing up is the one in Syria. There were tragedies all over the Middle East. There was a tragedy in Russia as well. Did you see anybody talking? We talked about that. Of course, we talked about the terror attack, but what was the response in Europe? We had an article yesterday on Infowars. Europe declines to stand in solidarity with the St. Pete bombing victims. There were no illuminated landmarks. This is something that they always do whenever there's a terrorist attack anywhere else, but not when there was one in Russia. Isn't that interesting? And I find it also interesting that as they're talking about Syria, that everybody ignores this attack in Tikrit. Now, don't we bear responsibility for that? We are there with the Iraqi government. We have as much involvement and control in Iraq as Russia and the Syrian government do in Syria. But of course, we're told that what happened, the tragedy that happened in Syria, is a reason that we need to get tough with Russia and we need to attack in Syria and have a regime change there. But nobody is calling for a regime change in Iraq over this recent issue. We know what's going on with this. We have seen this before. Immediately, we have people come out. As soon as this attack happens, we have the U.S., Britain, and France all blaming Assad for the Syrian gas attack. We saw this 4 years ago. And eventually, what we wound up understanding as we saw an investigation, and they don't want to wait for an investigation. They've already got somebody picked out that they want to blame, and they want to use this tragedy, just like we see them try to use a domestic terror event, to push their agenda. And what happened 4 years ago was we learned both from UN and U.S. and Russian investigators, we eventually found out that it wasn't the Syrian government. We had a lot of people calling for us to get involved there, to become the Air Force for Al-Qaeda or the Air Force for ISIS, because they are our surrogates there. We put them in there for regime change. And now it's also interesting that this is all happening as we have the shakeup at the National Security Council, and that it comes on the heels of the admissions about Susan Rice, as we find this very damaging information about her. Remember what happened in Iraq before, when we had Bill Clinton, the day after the House came out with all of its indictments about him and Monica Lewinsky. What happened? He started bombing Iraq. This is a wag the dog scenario. And we should remind Donald Trump of what he said as he says, this has completely changed my mind on this. I hope it hasn't. We have a long story at Infowars that I won't go into the details of this. We had this talked about earlier in our live show. It looks like there's a Soros-linked group behind this chemical attack in Syria. But beyond that, let's remind everybody what Donald Trump said years ago. We should not attack Syria. If they make the stupid move to do so, the Arab League, whose members are laughing at us, should pay. There is nothing that is, he says, if we get involved in that fight, the U.S. gets nothing. Absolutely correct. We do not need to set the Middle East on fire. It didn't work for us in Libya. It will not work for us in Syria. We need to stop pursuing the policy of regime change. Stay with us.
Infowars has partnered with Defender Body Armor to bring you a new state-of-the-art line of advanced, highly tested body armor from InfoWarsStore.com. Defender Body Armor is certified to protect against all handgun rounds and even armor-piercing FN 5.7 pistol rounds. The secret to Defender Body Armor is its proprietary processing technology that disperses more kinetic energy at a rate higher than any other traditional body armor, using one of the strongest synthetic materials ever created, called ultra-high molecular weight polyethylene. Defender armor is also super compact and lightweight. There's a reason the Department of Defense chose Defender to manufacture their new line of advanced lightweight armor. It works. Defender Body Armor is made right here in America and has received the highest level ballistic resistance certification from an authorized NIJ ballistic laboratory. Defender Body Armor is now available through InfoWarsStore.com, so you can defend yourself, your family, and finance the info war against the globalists all at the same time. A total 360 win.
You provided Alex with the caveman.
Well, so we've been formulating this stuff for a while, and we've been getting these different flavors, and oh, I don't know about this one, and so I've been taking that stuff, and I'm an old man. I'm 42. I work out 5 times a week, if not more.
I hear you're okay in jiu-jitsu. That's what I hear.
No, I'm not. I'm terrible. I'm terrible. But the point is that I have a lot of aches and shoulders, and there's weird joint stuff that I've had issues with for years. And this bone broth, the caveman bone broth, along with our joint formula, has just worked magic for me. And that's just, that's just from my personal experience. I think they're great products, and I think if anybody else has those issues, that you should definitely, you owe it to yourself to check it out. If I'm wrong, then hey man, write me a mean letter. But let me tell you, they work for me. And so,
yeah, they work for me too. We were talking about this earlier. Du and I play basketball, and I'm just now, like for the first time in my life, I'm 27 now. After I play basketball, my knees are barking. But the bone broth and the joint formula, like you just said, you combine those two. I felt the difference immediately. I felt it immediately.
Yeah, and it actually tastes good. Like, I'm really picky, and I will drink it. It tastes good to me. I love chocolate, so I really like the flavor of the caveman. So, if the bone broth if the bone broth is really that gross, I would never have known because it tastes really good. And my favorite is the Super Female Vitality. So ladies, get yourself some Super Female Vitality if you haven't already, because it just gets me going. I'll take a whole bunch of that stuff before I go out and do
get it for your wife then too, or girlfriend.
Right? I go and take a bunch of it before I go do Man on the Street, and I just start running, zipping around, running right into the action. No fear, nothing. So,
well, that's a big primary part about fighting the globalists, is making sure that we stay healthy and stay clear-eyed and stay honest and stay humble. I hope that we do that here at Infowars. We got a lot going on, and we're in the middle of the fight, so we really appreciate it when anybody supports us, either by purchasing our products, or you can even go onto our store and donate. We're doing this by the skin of our teeth. I know it looks like we're in a $1 billion studio, but Alex has never taken 1 cent of borrowed money at all whatsoever. This is all money that's come from you, the listeners. So you have literally built this place, built this place with your compassion, and built this place with the support that you've sent us. So from the bottom of my heart, I appreciate it, because I know we wouldn't be able to do this, and we wouldn't have a voice if it wasn't for you. So once again, we got to thank the listeners for their steadfastness in supporting us. And even when we make mistakes, and even when we're not right, and even when we might go a little bit crazy, you guys stick with us, and I appreciate that.
Welcome back. Now, we're just talking about how the move to do something about Syria, to say, as Donald Trump said, there's been too many lines crossed and it was Obama's fault, he should have done something 4 years ago. Well, no, we found out that it really wasn't the Syrian government 4 years ago. And we see, as we mentioned before, that there's involvement from George Soros. I'm going to talk more about that in just a moment. But I think it's also significant that we see that this is happening the day after there were major revelations about Susan Rice that the mainstream media does not want to talk about. As I pointed out, they use this type of distraction, and they've used it very obviously in the past. Bill Clinton, every time there would be something that would break, especially when the House brought up the impeachment articles, and he goes and bombs another country. So they would very much like to change the discussion, but they also want to have regime change. That has been their goal. That has been their goal throughout the Middle East. That is the policy that was in place with the Obama administration, with Hillary Clinton's State Department. It was disastrous, but they're continuing down this same line, just as they're continuing down the same line to shut down the media. And that's what we're going to talk about also in this segment. But I want to take a look at what was said by Donna Rice. She said at one point in this interview that she had, there is no equivalence between unmasking and leaking. I think it's very important that we take a look at the semantics that are being used here, because as I pointed out, when you talk about unmasking Trump and unmasking those in the Trump administration, what it does is implies that he did something wrong, not that she did something wrong. And so let's take a look at some of the synonyms of what unmask are here. I tweeted this out. I said, you know, some of the things that she did to these discussions that by law were to remain private, well, she advertised it. She betrayed those whose privacy was supposed to be protected. She brandished this out. She broadcast it. She disclosed it, displayed it, divulged it, exhibited it, featured it, flashed it, flaunted it, opened it to view, paraded it, presented it, published it, reported it, showed off it, and trotted it out. And you know, the people who were supposed to have their privacy protected were unclothed, uncovered, unveiled. Just as if she'd gone out and pull somebody's pants down on stage. You have an expectation of privacy, and you have a legal right to that kind of privacy. No laws were violated. If they were surveilling these people, why don't we know who they were surveilling? Why don't we come out with some of that information? You know, there was an editorial on The Hill, an op-ed piece, asked, why is the mainstream media trying to cover up the Susan Rice story? And so the worst kind of bias is the bias of omission. And it's something that I've said many times. When we want to talk about an objective media, what they choose to cover reflects their bias. Not even what they happen to say, but what they choose to cover. And we can see this in spades with the Susan Rice story and the fact that they do not want to cover it. And so they ask in this editorial, why is this a big story that deserves attention? Well, simply put, one of the highest ranking members of the previous administration unmasked, or let's say brandished or advertised, names of members of the incoming administration via classified intelligence reports, prompting many questions that warrant dodged journalism. For example, who leaked the information? She says, well, this isn't the same as leaking. We're going to call this unmasking. Look, understand what they're doing. They're trying to frame members of the Trump administration, particularly President Trump, by doing this. And part of that is by using the term, even using the term unmasking, they make it look as if he had done something. But they're trying to create this guilt by association, guilt by alleged association. Then they also ask, who, if anyone, ordered Rice to open to view the names of private U.S. citizens in the first place? Was the ultimate objective of spying and exposing Trump associates for political purposes or for national security reasons? If it's for national security reasons, then by this time, now that we've gone for 7 or 8 months, you should have something there. If there is a national security issue, you should be public with it. You should let us know. Why did Rice lie when originally asked about an announcement by the House Intelligence Committee Chairman Devin Nunes that Trump and some transition team members were incidentally swept up into surveillance? She told Judy Woodruff on March 22nd, I know nothing about this. I was surprised to see reports from Chairman Nunes on that account. And then they said this, and I think this is very telling. If you were somebody like Tim Russert of NBC's Meet the Press, and you had an interview with Donna Rice Susan Rice after all this came out, wouldn't you think that Andrea Mitchell would begin by playing that when she said, I know absolutely nothing about this information that Nunes is talking about. I know nothing about that. Wouldn't you lead with that? Wouldn't you lead with the statement that she made that was an outright lie? No, because the purpose of Andrea Mitchell was to help her evade what was going on. And then they talk about how the New York Times didn't feature the story at all. Instead, buried on A16, they have Trump tries to deflect Russia scrutiny, citing crooked scheme by Obama. As they point out, that is nothing but a joke. Now, we know that Mitch McConnell came out today and said that he is going to back a Senate Intelligence Committee to conduct a query that will be headed by Senators Richard Burr and Mark Warner. Richard Burr being a Republican, Mark Warner being a Democrat. Conduct a query into Susan Rice's handling of this raw intelligence data. Now, as we look at the censorship that is going on here, I want to highlight a story that was on WND, which gives us a good example of how social media is subtly shutting things down and censoring them, because it reflects on our privacy, it reflects on the freedom of press, and we're going to talk here about how the Soros-funded groups are now complaining, just as Nancy Pelosi has, that Trump is destroying our privacy by allowing your ISPs to sell information about you, ignoring all of the things that they have put in place to destroy your privacy. And I'm not saying that it's a good thing that the ISPs are doing that. I'm not in favor of that. But clearly, they're using this for political, partisan purposes, and there are other things that are happening with it. But let's take a look at the way that social media, for example, is censoring. And of course, you know that they have far more information on you than the ISPs do. The ISPs will never collect the kind of information that you freely give to Facebook on a daily basis. WND points out that there was a Drudge tweet that basically put a gag on Trump's account. The president's message was replaced with a warning that there was potentially sensitive content. Now, they noticed that as Matt Drudge put out that Rice was had ordered spy documents on Donald Trump, he retweeted that. And somebody pointed out, hey, look, Trump is retweeting the Drudge report. They said that was way too much for somebody at Twitter, so what they did was they essentially put it on a restricted basis. They said this tweet may include potentially sensitive content. In order to view it, you'll need to change your sensitive media selection. You can find this under the safety section of your privacy and safety account settings. Isn't that interesting? So once Donald Trump retweeted that, they put that on as potentially sensitive information. The fact that he retweeted that things were being exposed with Susan Rice. Zero Hedge pointed out that Westminster blog, and of course this is the British blog that has been put together with Nigel Farage and others who are part of Brexit, says it appears that the change cannot be done even inside the Twitter app. They warn that it looks like an anti-establishment movement that is going to have to battle to sustain its voice because they're going to try to shut us down in every way possible. So we now have the Soros group, Fight for the Future, saying that we have to organize to stop ISPs from selling our information. Not that we're going to organize to stop Google. Not that we're going to demand that Google not censor alternative media, or that we would demand that Facebook not censor us. And we're going to talk about what's going on in Germany. Massive fines being put forward there to justify the twisting of arms and the censoring of people there with social media. But they point out in this article at Infowars.com by Jerome Corsi, Fight for the Future is a non-profit organization founded in 2011 whose mission is to ensure that the web continues to hold freedom of expression and creativity at its core. Well, that sounds really great. And nobody would argue with that, except that they're using this in a purely political way, and these people have supported Google's censorship of the web at the same time. So they say on the one hand, we're against privacy violations, but then they support censorship of the web. In the same way, as I didn't get to in the last segment, I wanted to talk about what was being done with this Soros group, the White Helmets. When we look at what is happening in Syria, they said the day before this attack, there was a Gulf-based Orient TV that announced, tomorrow we are launching a media campaign to cover airstrikes on Hama countryside, including the usage of chemical warfare against civilians. Isn't that interesting that a day before this happened, that came out? And that the day that it happens, they immediately know who is to blame, so we can start launching missiles right away, so we can change everything. That is the hallmark of a false flag attack. And the fingerprints of this other Soros group, the White Helmets, is all over it. We'll be.
Why is the fungus? Why is the mold? Why is the yeast taking over? What is going on? What has changed? Dr. Group, the new product will sell out definitely in days. You've been testing it for almost a decade. You've got rave reviews from your patients who've been taking it privately at your clinics. Myco ZX supports normal fungal and yeast balance, proprietary blend of herbs and enzymes made with high-quality ingredients. It's available at InfoWarsStore.com. We also have free shipping, orders $50 or more, and 10% off when you sign up for auto ship. Additionally, on top of that, and then you fund an organization dedicated to the truth and get something you and your family absolutely need. But you should consult your healthcare provider. This is not a game. This is not a joke. Especially if you have really big yeast levels or fungus in your body. There can be some responses to this as you're flushing it. But why is this product so powerful? What does it do?
So we've been doing research just like you have on what's currently going on. Obviously, we stay ahead of the game because our job is to protect and address the root cause of the problem, which is why I've been...
Now, we want stuff for our own kids.
This is why we've addressed the president, let's address the root cause of America's health problems. But getting back to fungus, it's becoming an increasing epidemic that's only getting worse.
Killing bats everywhere, other animals, squirrels are dying.
Funguses were used as bioweapons.
So why is it suddenly killing so many mammals?
Yeah, fungus is a growing epidemic, and I've been testing this formula and making changes to this formula for over 10 years. I've had nobody... Here's the thing, Alex. When you go to the doctor with a list of symptoms, you can look at symptoms of fungus overgrowth in the body. It's going to show, you're going to pull up over 100 symptoms, everything from brain fog, lack of energy, insomnia, headaches, bowel problems.
Joint pain.
It's joint pain. It's linked to Crohn's disease.
Infertility. What about the obesity epidemic? I know they test people that are really obese and like they're just colonized by fungus.
Yeast overgrowth. I have a study right here by Jacob Titelbaum at the Fibromyalgia and Fatigue Center in Dallas. Yeast overgrowth is linked to an average weight gain of 32.5 pounds. What doctor...
By the way, folks, look, I'm not bragging. We game-changed the presidency. We game-changed the New World Order. Globalism is falling because of you. You are the Infowar. Listen, this is religious for me, okay? I do not bring you something unless I absolutely believe in it. And if we were reigned with $1 billion, I would turn 99% of it against the enemy. I want to defeat them. I'm ready to give my life. Everybody knows that, against the enemy. Please, we only have a limited supply of this. I want to get your reviews. I want to hear what you have to say. For me, it's been incredible. MycoZX, antifungal, antifungus, anti-yeast. Get it today. Limited run. It'll be months till we get more. InfoWarsStore.com, InfoWarsLife.com. MycoZX goes great with the bomb defense. InfoWarsLife.com or 888-253-3139. And you can't support an organization that isn't fighting hard. Look at the response we're getting. We're changing the world together. You are the Infowar. God bless you all. Let's go to Debit in Florida. Debit in Florida, you're on the air.
Great. Hey, thank you so much. Listen, I have bought your product, and I gotta say they're amazing. Anyone who's on the fence, buy it, because I've got Caveman, Superman Vitality, Secret 12, Vitamin Mineral Fusion. I've got the body armor.
Wow, thank you.
Wow.
You're the type of listener that makes it all possible. Which nutraceutical does you like best?
I really like the Vitamin Mineral Fusion, to be honest. That's
amazing.
Really incredible. I drank it in the morning, and I swear to you, I felt incredible. Like I haven't felt weak. My morning was fantastic, and I love you guys. I love the Infowars crew, and I just want to, I want to take this opportunity to tell anybody out there who's on the fence, just buy it. You will love it. I'm telling you, I've never bought a bad product.
What you find in our news is the same thing you find in our products at InfoWarsLife.com. It's a win-win. InfoWarsLife.com.
A creeping pro-Sharia academic curriculum blankets the United States. Thanks to the Department of Education, PBS, the George W. Bush administration, and the former Muslim Brotherhood lackey-in-chief, Barack Obama.
He took them off the terrorist list. For years and years, the Muslim Brotherhood is on the terrorist list around the world. In the Arab world, who knows them best? But Mr. Barack decided to take them off the terrorist list and start to be sponsoring them and put them in charge of Egypt.
An unabashed initiation of Sharia law indoctrination unleashed on feral 5th grade to 12th grade American minds. A system completely opposed to the U.S. Constitution, American traditions, and a stepping stone into the savage underbelly of homegrown jihadism. Breitbart writes, Access Islam is funded by by the Department of Education and is being promoted on various websites. Martin Mallier, president and founder of Christian Action Network, or CAN, tells Breitbart News, so PBS Learning Media is one of the websites that is promoting it. The Smithsonian also promotes it. The Indiana Department of Education promotes it. And even the United Nations promotes it. Well, that's a given. In a demand letter to U.S. Education Secretary Betsy DeVos, president of PBS Paula Kerger, and president of Ohio State University Michael Drake, CAN wrote, "The nature of the materials and lack of any similar materials for other religions such as Judaism, Christianity, or Hinduism demonstrate the Establishment Clause violation, because there can be no argument that the materials are for comparative educational purposes." Mallier says CAN has been able to determine the curriculum was originally started by President George W. Bush in 2005. But at that time, it was a program that simply taught students about the traditions, culture, and holidays of Islam. Then it became greatly expanded under the Obama administration. It has continued to develop and now has had a greater, broader outreach. In the early 1960s, the Supreme Court ruled on Engel versus Vitale and Abington School District versus Shemp, declaring school-sponsored prayer and Bible readings unconstitutional. So why is the indoctrination of Sharia protected? And by what? Certainly not the U.S. Constitution. It appears to be protected by a league of bleeding heart lefties and Sharia advocates inhabiting the legislatures across America. For example, on March 25th, the Montana legislature passed in a tight vote, 56-44, to ban Sharia law in the United States. Sharia law boldly states that it is the only law of the land, thus eventually circumventing the U.S. Constitution.
The U.S. Constitution, which is made by people, and the Sharia law is made by Allah. So that is all the way above. That has to be definitely in the land, not for the America, for the whole world, would be above.
So that should be above the U.S. Constitution.
Yes.
And what are your views on, say, local U.S. governing laws versus Sharia law?
A lot of people are pretty turned off by the word Sharia, but there's not much to it. It's really just the same fundamentals that are laid out in the Constitution.
Negative. Under Sharia law, wives can be beaten. Under Sharia law, females enjoy fewer rights than males. Under Sharia law, wives should be subservient to their husbands. And under Sharia law, women are deemed lacking in faith and intelligence. All of these things do not happen under the Constitution because men and women had the exact same rights.
So, who were the 44 fools in Montana who voted against it? It's nothing less than an affront to our battle-hardened First Amendment, strictly prohibiting the aggressive establishment of a state religion. John Bound for Infowars.com.
As John Bound was pointing out, this pro-Sharia agenda is being funded by the Department of Education. It's got connections to the Bush family. It's all part of the social engineering that happens there. But of course, remember that our Department of Education and the people who are trying to dictate what is happening at our local schools is not just a social and political agenda that they're selling us, but they're deliberately trying to dumb down our children. And of course, we had Charlotte Iserby point that out, along with Phyllis Schlafly, as they went to the new Department of Education right after Ronald Reagan became president back in 1980. And they said, this is a deliberate attempt to dumb our children down. We have to get rid of this. It had just been created by Jimmy Carter. It was less than 4 years old. Ronald Reagan had campaigned to get rid of it. He didn't. Where are we now? Well, we've got a Department of Education that is trying, among other things, to push Common Core issues on us. We had Donald Trump yesterday going to a CEO business town hall, and he had this to say. Very encouraging what he had to say. He said, Common Core, we have to bring education more local, he said. We can't be managing education from Washington. He went on to say, when I go out to Iowa, when I go out to different states and I talk, they want to run their school programs locally. They do a much better job. And I like the fact of getting rid of Common Core. You know, Common Core to me, we have to end it. We have to bring education local to me. I've always said, I've been saying it during the campaign, and we're going to do it. Well, here's the deal. If you want to make education local, it isn't just getting rid of Common Core. We have to get rid of the Department of Education. It isn't enough to get rid of some of the symptoms of the disease. We have to cut the cancer out at the core. If we leave the infrastructure in, it will continue to do Common Core, or they'll rebrand it, as we see later on in this article. They'll change the name of it. They'll do something else, and that's exactly what is happening with Obamacare. If we do not destroy this administrative state, if we simply put some lipstick on it, it will continue to plague us. They say a recent Heritage Foundation, this is an article from Breitbart, a panel of education policy professionals urged the Trump administration and Washington politicians to refrain from making even school choice a federal program. See, this is something that Betsy DeVos has gone to Washington. She's supporting school choice. That should not be a federal program. We should not have the federal government using the Department of Education to control our education, even if we think that it's a good thing. They shouldn't be doing that. We need to get them out of our lives. We just need to make the Department of Education go away, and here's why. DeVos has drawn concern over some of her decisions and comments since assuming her post, they point out. For example, she has surrounded herself with advisors and staff who have ties to Jeb Bush, a vocal proponent of Common Core, as well as to Indiana, where Common Core was repealed but then simply rebranded. See, that's the whole thing. We have to decide whether the administrative state is going to be deconstructed or if it's going to be rebranded. And you understand that if we put up something, if they put school choice in here, 4 years from now, it'll all change and it'll all go away. We don't need our lives to be micromanaged from Washington, whether it's education or whether it's healthcare. She also recently said that the federal Every Student Succeeds Act, the ESSA, this is what Betsy DeVos said, she said it essentially does away with the notion of Common Core. But they point out that grassroots parent activists who are still battling Common Core in their states flatly reject the idea that ESSA does away with Common Core. They say it still requires the Federal Department of Education to approve of state education plans. See, we don't have local control if we have to have it signed off on in Washington. We're not children. We're not going to be put on an allowance. And one of the spokespersons for Florida Parents Rise said Secretary DeVos is equating ESSA with federalism as it relates to education. It's a central problem we all face. There is zero provision in the Constitution, deliberately so by the founders, for the federal government to have any purview over education. It was and it is an issue of local control and of sovereignty. You see, Richard Nixon wasn't impeached over some of the things that he did, like creating the EPA. They should have impeached Jimmy Carter for creating the Department of Education, and we need to not keep these tools in place. Now, moving on, we have the U.S. withdrawing funding from UN Population Fund. That's a good thing as well. The State Department said on Monday that it was ending U.S. funding for the United Nations Population Fund, the international body's agency that is focused on what they call family planning. It's focused on providing abortions, as well as health care in more than 150 countries. Now, what happens with this is that every time we have a change from a Republican to a Democrat administration, it does exactly what I was saying. They move to change to defund it, or then they put the funding back in. Because why? We still have the United Nations. We're still part of that infrastructure. They leave that there, then it changes. Now, stay with us when we come back. Alex Jones is going to address the outrageous charges by Newsweek. They're demanding that free speech be criminalized. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Alex Jones here with a very important news update to anybody out there that wants to be prepared. But it goes beyond being prepared. Our bodies absolutely must have the good halogen iodine or we will die. And you look at all of the thyroid problems and all the people that don't have energy and that have all sorts of hormone problems. And from my research, and a lot of just mainline research, it leads back to iodine over and over and over again. It's as important as vitamin C. If you don't get iodine, you die. But most people are just deficient, so they're low energy, they're sick. You got to have iodine in your body so that your body can produce the hormones you need. It is the base to so many things. And since I got into iodine 4 years ago, we've helped change the entire paradigm by developing and bringing to the public deep earth crystals from 7,000 to 12,000 feet of the purest iodine available. Other iodine comes from the ocean or from other byproducts of chemical facilities, and it's tainted. It's bound. It's not absorbable. I tried it. And I had incredible effects even with dirty iodine because the body needs it. When you don't have iodine, it absorbs the chlorine, the fluoride, and all these other bad halogens. Do yourself and your family a favor and check out the importance of iodine for yourself. I think you're going to be blown away. And whatever you do, support the broadcast and get a bottle of Survival Shield Nascent Iodine X2. Also consult your physician because if you've been deficient in it or have other issues, it can have some dramatic effects. As for me and most folks I talk to, it's been a game changer in the positive column, but still consult your physician because iodine is no joke. It's a key building block of the body. And if you haven't had it for a long time and suddenly have it, some folks say they've experienced things like a detoxing effect and things like that. You've got to have vitamin C. You've got to have iodine to live. You've got to have water to live. Iodine is key. You must have it, but consult your physician first before you get powerful Survival Shield Nascent Iodine X2 at InfoWarsLife.com or call toll-free. We can answer your questions, 888-253-3139. Last year, we've witnessed the Democratic Party, foreign governments, thousands of newspapers, hundreds of celebrities trying to organize the assassination of President Trump, even when he was a candidate. They're the ones politically trying to intimidate our free speech and trying to influence us with threats of violence. That's why it's particularly ridiculous when they come out and call for my arrest by twisting things I've said, claiming that I want violence. Truly, these people have no shame.
Yes, I have thought an awful lot about blowing up the White House.
He's an embarrassment to this country. It makes me so angry that this country has gotten to this point, that this fool, this bozo, has wound up where he has. Well, I'd like to punch him in the face.
I'm going to kill the president-elect, bring it, Secret Service, and then going into frightening detail, getting a sniper rifle and perching myself where it counts. Find a bedroom in the White House that suits you, expert.
You just saw Robert De Niro say that he wants to punch the president in the nose. He came back out a second time and said it. Then we heard from Madonna saying she thinks about blowing up the White House. That's premeditated. And we've seen countless newspapers from the LA Times to the New York Times with their writers saying someone killed Trump or I want to kill Trump. It's been incredible. And I've been pointing this out all along and hypothetically saying what would happen if we called for violence. We're going to lose this fight for America if we get violent. I'm one of the biggest proponents of nonviolence and Mahatma Gandhi and Martin Luther King. Everybody knows that. But now we've got Newsweek and a whole bunch of other publications coming out today saying Alex Jones's threat to congressmen may be a felony. Now, notice I made some of these comments that they've twisted a week ago. So they've sat around and waited and run this by U.S. attorneys and others to then edit my statements together and say the sum of his words mean a threat, like fill your hand. I also talked about suing people that are saying I'm a Russian agent. Fill your hand means take action against me if you think you've got what it takes. Certainly, I'm not saying I'm John Wayne in True Grit saying fill your hand with a pistol.
I call that bold talk for a one-eyed fat man.
Fill your hand, you son of a bitch.
Mickey Rourke has come out and called for killing the president and says he wants to kill him. Thousands and thousands of prominent people, so much I can't even keep track of it, have come out and said someone needs to kill him or they're going to kill him, and none of them are prosecuted. None of them get in trouble. Then I come out with statements that they edit together that are clearly tongue-in-cheek and basically art performance, as I do in my rants, which I admit I do, as a form of art, and they turned that in to a premeditated plan that I'm trying to influence that chicken neck Schiff, who has made up all this crap about Trump and Russians and has been caught lying, saying that Rice wasn't spying. This guy's a loser. When I say I'm going to kick your ass, it's the info war. I say every day, we're going to destroy you with the truth. We're going to annihilate you with our speech. We are in a war against enemies who are a bunch of liars, and that we are winning via information warfare or info wars.
He's nothing but a big mouth bitch bully, and I'd love to have 30 seconds in the room with the little bitch.
But it does show how desperate they are, because they admit that the George Soros-funded, Democratic Party-controlled Media Matters basically put together this edited transcript and is basically pushing all this and calling for Google to ban us. Google's already massively censoring. And the leftists are intimidating Google all over the world to go full communist Chinese and completely delist us. The problem is we have hundreds of radio affiliates and tens of millions of people every week that visit our websites and the URL Infowars.com. So your attempts to brand us as the violent ones, when you're the ones all over the news, and even Atlantic Monthly and other top publications of the elite saying COG, overthrow Trump. You have people organizing military coups that were formerly high-level Defense Department, truly seditious stuff, and everybody sits here and takes it. And then I go out and make comments that you twist, and then you claim that I'm trying to organize violence against Schiff to influence him. Oh, because it's so damning, he calls me a Russian. The old saying is, from Merle Haggard, you're walking on the fighting side of me. When I fight in information. When I punch somebody, when I talk about Trump dealing death blows, or we're in a death battle against communism, I don't literally mean death. And everybody knows the compendium of my speech and what I stand for is nonviolent when it comes to offense. I'm all about defense, and everyone knows that. Everyone understands that. And we see the incredible hypocrisy of the elitist left, allied with communist China and others, trying to bully this country into submission, trying to brand us as the violent people. So let me be clear, as I've always been clear. I'm against any offensive violence. And I am disgusted by the left and Black Lives Matter and the Soros-funded groups with hundreds of millions of dollars saying, bang, bang, you know, kill the pigs, murder the police.
Marching down the avenue. 20 more pigs and we'll be through. 20 more pigs and we'll be through. A pig is a pig, that's what I said. No, a pig is a pig, that's it. Yeah. A pig is a pig, that's what I said. No, he's a pig, he's a pig, that's it! Oink, oink, bang, bang! Oink, oink, bang, bang! Oink, oink, bang, bang! Oink, oink, bang, bang!
They'll probably edit this and say that I said that. No, I'm not saying murder the police. And calling for the death of federal officers and all this stuff. They've got a lot of nerve after their jihad the last year, plus calling for violence against Donald Trump, his supporters, beating him up, you name it, to then come out and claim that I am now committing crimes, talking about in a rant, I want to kick your butt or whatever, when clearly I'm talking about the information war. Unbelievable. But it doesn't stop there. We've got Bow Wow saying he wants to kidnap, that's Snoop Dogg's nephew, big rapper, kidnap the president's wife and put her into sex slavery. That's okay, though. Snoop Dogg comes out a few weeks ago with a big video pushed by Viacom and basically says, go out and murder the president, shoot him in the head, kill police. That's totally okay with the Democrats. CEO threatens to assassinate Trump with sniper rifle at the White House. Again, nothing's done to him. So who's going to assassinate Trump? Twitter erupts with calls for Donald Trump to be killed. Again, I mentioned this. You've got Mickey Rourke threatens to kill Trump in a profanity-laced tirade. Black Lives Matter calls for killing police. That's CBS News. On and on and on. You've got Gawker and Time Magazine and Newsweek all calling for the case for riots, the defense for rioting. So, when I say performance art, I mean, I let myself get angry. I let myself say satirical things, wild things, whatever. But when I'm saying, you know, you're a jerk, you're a piece of crap, say that to my face. I say, you people. You know, notice I'm talking about the whole power structure here where I talk about you're the people. You're the people calling for violence. You're the people pushing all this crap. Oh, then they say, have the FCC shut me down. I said this on an internet feed. I didn't say it on my commercial radio show. I said it late at night to an adult audience, and it's nothing Bill Maher doesn't say. So let me be clear again, because I don't want there to be any violence, and they say it's attributed to me, which is the kind of stuff they've pulled in the past. You know, you've got people out there like Noam Chomsky saying that Trump's going to do a false flag. I'm concerned about a false flag aimed at the left because they're so unpopular with all their bullying to make them look like victims. Now, quite frankly, am I worried about being indicted as they're calling for this? Absolutely not, because I know what I said. I know the intent of what I said, and I know that the people that are pushing for me to be arrested and actually lobbying for it are the ones calling for the president to actually be overthrown violently. I'm trying to stop violence and have stability in this republic. But that said, it will be quite a bit of publicity if they finally come right out and indict me, as the Democrats are calling for it. So I do have to be careful, though, about what I say, because it'll be taken out of context. So again, I just want to be clear. I mean no violence against Mr. Schiff. I know the guy's a liar. I know that he is an attack dog of the Democrats. I know that he's really trying to hurt this country, so I dislike him. But I wish no harm on him or his wife or his children or anybody else. So this is not a retraction. This is a clarification. Yes, I don't want violence. You guys are openly calling for it everywhere. So I think then you should ask yourselves what hypocrite planet you woke up on when I say 1/10 of what you said, clearly jesting, and then you take it as serious and call for my incarceration for 6 years in federal prison. Good luck with that, hypocrites.
That concludes our nightly news tonight. Join us again tomorrow night at 7 Central, 8 p.m. Eastern for the Infowars Nightly News.
I'm very proud to announce the introduction of the highest quality Infowars Biome Defense Probiotic. We wanted to come out with the largest spectrum of high-quality, known probiotics that have been proven to improve overall digestion and health and detoxification in the body. Biome Defense is an exclusive blend of 50 billion live and active cultures from over 23 different probiotic strains that are known to support digestion and intestinal function. Our researchers are confident that we have been able to develop what will be the leading probiotic on the market. Secure your Biome Defense in ultra strength or regular strength at InfoWarsLife.com today and get started supporting your digestive system naturally. We've been testing this formula for years, but this is the limited first run to the public, so please take advantage of it today. Support your own health and support the InfoWar.
Welcome to the Infowars Nightly News. I'm David Knight. It's Wednesday, April the 5th, 2017. Here are our top stories.
Tonight, Newsweek is calling for the federal arrest of Alex Jones because of what they say was an explicitly anti-gay threat to beat up Congressman Adam Schiff.
Fill your hand, you son of a bitch!
Meanwhile, the numerous real threats to President Donald Trump go unpunished as mainstream media talking heads and the Hollywood elite get away with assassination threats to the President of the United States. Then, guess who's behind the big push to have Google censor the alternative media? You guessed it, George Soros, public enemy number one. That's coming up next on the Infowars Nightly News.
The reason Infowars Life has 5-star ratings on major third-party sites is because I want products I'm going to use for my family. I take this. My family takes this. And then it funds the operation with the most hardcore, truthful information you're going to find anywhere. So what you find in our news is the same thing you find in our products at InfoWarsLife.com.
If I ever forget to take them, like I have a noticeable difference. I don't feel good. The nascent iodine is one of the ones that was life-changing for me.
Yeah, I actually have just run out of my super female. I had a few bottles at my house, and I've been taking it again, hitting the gym once again.